Today in the cryptographic session, we will deal with multiple things here. So the first thing we will be dealing today is the part of encoding. I'll explain what is encoding. After that, encoding part, we jump toward the encryption, why we use encryption and all different things. After encryption, we jump toward the hashing part, what is the main concept of using hashing and why we use the hashing part, right? After hashing, we jump toward the digital certificates. Again, both the things were same. You can call it digital certificate, you can just call it digital signatures as well. Both the concept was same. Again, the main motive of using different thing, different digital certificate and digital signatures was same. Again, so we will start with encoding, then we jump toward these topics, right? Let's start with encoding. Like, what are the main concept of using encoding? Let's say, like, Mike, which was your main primary language to speak? What was your
Sorry?
main primary language? What was your main primary language? Like you use Hindi, English, Arabic. What language you use?
English?
Okay, as your primary language.
Yes.
Okay, let's say you understand and you can talk in English, right? Now,
Yes.
let's suppose I'm not comfortable with English. I can only understand Hindi here, right? Let's say you want to convey some message to me. You can speak in English, but I can't speak and like I can't understand English. I can only speak in Hindi, but I can only understand Hindi, right? Just to convey some
Well,
message, just to convey some message to me, either you have to convert that message from English to Hindi, and that conversion make the message compatible, make the data readable for me as well, right? Because when you convert the message from English to Hindi, I can read the data, I can read that message, right? So the main concept of using encoding here was the compatibility part. Then if I just go with other example, let's say all our computer systems deal with data in form of binary language. Our computers understand binary language, right? They can't deal with simple alphanumeric values. They can't deal with these things. They can only understand English. So they can only understand the binary values, zeros and ones, right? But let's say if my computer starts showing all the binary values instead of these simple special characters like English here, DIGITAL, instead of showing the alphabets or the characters here, right? If my system starts showing me the binary values for this D, for this I, for this G, ITAL, right? If my system starts showing me the binary values, then I can't read the value, I can't read that data, right? So what my system will do, my system will convert the binary value which he can read and write, which he can process. My system will convert that binary value with some conversion technique, you can say with some character encoding part. Let's say I'm using ASCII values here. With some character set, my system will convert that binary data into English alphabets. So I can understand the data. I can understand that message. Right? That was the main part of encoding. We were just we were just translating our message, our data in a form so that all the system, or you can say the receiver, can easily interpret, can easily read that data, can easily process that data. That was the main concept of encoding, just to make the data compatible for all the receivers, right? We just encode them into a text. We just encode them into a form which is readable for all the receivers. That was the main concept of encoding, just to make data compatible, right? So for the encoding technique, which is generally used, we have a technique. You can say we have a form of encoding. We generally call it base 64. So base 64 is again one of the encoding technique which was widely used, which was again widely used, or you can say for the websites, for the systems, for the messages, for the mobile applications, for different things. Base 64 is the widely used encoding technique. So let's understand how the base 64 data was encoded. Right here, let's say I have a message with the name HEY. Right. So just to encode this message, what my system will do, my system will first convert these characters one by one. Let's say my system will start with the character H, right? My system will get, my system will convert this character H, right? According to the ASCII table, according to ASCII character encoding, according to the ASCII table, let me just show you here. What my system will do, my system will get the binary value for this character H according to ASCII table. If I just show you the table for, let's say, like ASCII to binary, if I just show you the table, we have different characters, right? And for all those characters, we have some binary values. Like if you just see here, not here, let's go with this one. Here you can see for all the English alphabets, right? We have some ASCII value, ASCII codes, you can say. And if you just convert the ASCII codes, you get this binary value, right? So what your system will do? Your system will start with this ASCII values. So the first character here was the character H, so the capital H you can say, right? So my system will start looking for the character H, and the capital H was here at number 072, and the binary value for 072 was here, this one. What my system will do, my system will generate a binary value for this character H and place it here, right? Let me just small the size and move it aside. Yeah. So I'm going down here. Okay. So this is the binary value for the character. Let me just write it here. This one is the character for the H, right? After character H, what we have is the small e, right? Again, my system will start looking for the small e character here, and it's at 101. My small e has a ASCII code as 101, and if you convert 101 into binary, you get this values 011000101. Again, my system will copy that value and place them here, right? This value was for the character e. After character e, what we have is the small y. Again, my system will follow the same steps. Start looking for the small y, and if you just scroll down, you can just see my small y has a ASCII value of 121, 121. And if you just convert this 121 into binary, you get this value 011111001, right? Again, my system will generate that value, and we have the data. Again, this one is just the ASCII value. This is just the ASCII value for the message, hey, HEY, right? After that, after converting that message into binary, what my system will do, my system will pair those binary values into the group of six. My system will create a group of six binary values. So this one is the first group. So I'm just copying it here, and I'll place it here. After these six values, again, what I will do, I'll create one more group of six binary values. This is my second group from 000110. Again, I will copy it. Let me place it here. Just remove that space. Yeah. After that, again, I will create one more group here. Just copy it and place it here. Let me remove that space as well. After that, we have the last group here of the six. You just copy it and place it here, right? My system will create a group of six binary values and just store them in a separate location, right? After creating group of six binary values, what my system will do, my system will compare these binary values according to base 64 table. We have a different base 64 table. If I just show you the table, let's go with base 64, not this one. Let's go with table here. Or we can just go with any table. Let's go with this Wikipedia. So we can just go with the table. Yeah. And here you can see, right? What my system will do, my system will simply compare these binary values inside this table of the base 64, right? Let me just copy this first group of six binary values. I'm again copying it here, and let's search here for the exact match, right? When I search here, I got the values here, and the character for this binary value was S. What my system will do, my system will just replace these binary values and show me the character capital S here, right? Again, after that, it will follow the same step for other binary values as well, for other groups as well. Just copy it and paste it here. and we got the character capital H, capital G, sorry, right? So just write the character here, capital G. After that, what we have is the third pair for the binary values. Again, just copy the character, copy the binary values, and paste them here. I got the character capital V, right? So just write it here for the capital V. Then the last pair. Again, do the same steps. Copy the value, paste them here, and we got the character as 5, right? So you can just write it 5 here, right? So this one is the actual message which you want to convey to your receiver, right? And this is the base 64 encoding for the message which you have transmitted. So you can simply just write it here, capital HEY. If you just encode them into base 64, encoded base 64, you get the output as SGV5. This is the base 64 encoded value for the HEY. If you just use some kind of online encoder for the base 64, or just simply search here for online base 64 encoding, right? And let's go with the first link, base64encode.org. If I just write my message here, HEY, again, small letters and capital letters have different ASCII values, right? If you just use capital Y here or capital, or you can say small h here, this will completely change the output, right? So you have to be specific for the input. So if I just write the character, if I just write my message, hey, and then go with the encoding, I can see my output SGV5. Again, if I want to decode that message, so I can just go with decode as well. And for decoding, when my receiver receives this base 64 encoded message SGV5, again he will perform the reverse step. He will first compare them with the base 64 table. Then after getting the binary values, these binary values according to base 64 table, he will create a pair of 8 binary values, and then he will compare them to the ASCII table. Again, it's just a reverse process which we have performed for the encoding. For decoding, we always use the reverse process, right? So if I just decode that message SGV and 5, I just click on this decode button, not capital F, it's capital G. Small capital S, capital G, capital V, and 5. If I just click on decode, I got my message back, right? This one is just simple base 64 encoding. Again, the main concept here was the data compatibility, right? So all the users, all the receiver can read the data. Like if I just go with one thing, let's say for some characters, like let's say if I just go with Hindi here, I'm not sure about the Hindi, but you have seen these kind of things as well. Like when some kind of characters were not supported by the system, let's say you can see them. Let me just go with the term so I can show you these things. Not this one, not a language. Go with the English. Yeah, you have seen this kind of formats when your system was not able to read the data, right? The system shows you either boxes or the smileys or the, you can say, some unknown characters. So system starts showing you the unknown characters, and your system cannot interpret, cannot read those characters. Your system starts showing you the, like your boxes and all different kind of characters like this one. Again, it's not clear. Let me just show you a clear picture. Like this kind of boxes, like these small boxes and other different characters, right? These kind of characters were known as Mojibake, right? So just to make sure, like all the machines can read the data, right? What you will do? You will just convert that data into a form which all the machines can read, right? So at that time, what you will do, you will just convert them into an encoded technique like base 64. Again, base 64 is just one of the technique. You can convert them into other techniques as well, like base 32 is one of them. We have multiple other techniques which you can convert them. But the main point was just to convert the data into a form which can interpret, or you can say which is interpreted by all the machines, right? Just to represent the data to the user in a readable form. Right? The main concept was that. So after that simple encoding part, what we have is the encryption. So encoding was used for the compatibility, right? On the other hand, your encryption was used to ensure the confidentiality. Your encoding was used to make data readable for all the receivers, but your encryption was used to make data into or to convert data in such a form which is only readable, which can only be read by some specific users, by some you can say authorized users, authorized persons, right? Just to convert the data in such a form which can only be interpreted by authorized person, right? For that we use the encryption, and for encryption we should know few terms first. Let's start with those terms, then we jump toward the practical part for the encryption. So for encryption, like the first term we should know is the cipher, or before cipher let's go with the plain text, right? The message which you want to convey, by the message which you want to send to the person. Let's say, let's go with simple example, let's go with the WhatsApp. So let's go with any messenger application, like you are using WhatsApp, you are using Telegram, you are using WeChat, you are using Facebook Messenger, whatever messaging you are using. Or let's go with the email address, emails as well, right? As we know, all the emails were transmitted in form of encryption text, you can say, right? The actual message which I have written when I'm sending some kind of mails to Mike, let's say, right? The message which I want to convey to Mike is known as the plain text. The actual message which I want to convey to Mike is known as the plain text, right? So after plain text, we have the second term which we call the cipher. Cipher is just the algorithm which I'm going to use to convert the data into an encryption form, or just, or you can say, cipher is just a mathematical algorithm which I'll be using to encrypt that data, right? So cipher is just a algorithm, mathematical algorithm. Other than this cipher, the output for the encryption, or you can say the message, when it will be transmitted in such a readable form, the output or the translated messages will be known as a cipher text, right? What I will do, I will write some message, pass it to my cipher, right? So plain text is my input to the cipher, and my cipher will generate some kind of output, which is in the readable form again. That output is known as the cipher text, right? It's clear. Then after that, for all the ciphers, to use all the ciphers, we need to enter some kind of keys. So you can say the keys is nothing different than they were just like simple string values. They could be simple string values, they could be alphanumeric values, you can use some special characters as well. So again, it's your choice. But again, keys were just some string values, right, which were used by the ciphers to convert the data into an unreadable form, right? So let's start with encryption then. I'm just erasing this thing. So for encryption, the first thing, let's go with the algorithm directly so you will better understand. So let's go with the algorithms. So now nowadays the encryption algorithm which we use, you can say for almost all the times, right? When you are just communicating with some servers, when you're communicating through your WhatsApp messenger, through your mobile phones, all the times, not all the time, most of the time, you use this encryption algorithm, AES. That's again stands for Advanced Encryption Standard, right? This AES cipher, again, it's just a cipher because it's a mathematical algorithm which convert your data into a readable, into a unreadable form, right? It's a cipher. So for the AES cipher, you need to know few things like AES can only encrypt a fixed amount of data at a time, right? So AES can only encrypt 128 bit of data at a time. If you just convert 128 bit into characters, let's say AES can only encrypt 32 characters at a time, right? If you have a message like let's scale more than 32 characters, let's like this one, right? It's larger than 32 characters. If you have that kind of message which is larger than 32 characters, what AES will do, AES will just truncate this message into multiple halves. Like it will just truncate the message for the 32 characters, the first 32 characters, then again 32, then again 32, then again 32, right? It will create a block. The first, or you can say, yeah, it will create a block. You can say, you can call it a block. So the 32 character, or you can say the 128 bit of data is known as the block, right? Your AES will first encrypt that 32 characters, then encrypt again the next upcoming 32 characters, then again encrypt the next upcoming 32 characters, right? Or you can say 128 bits, right? So because of that part, your AES can only encrypt a fixed amount of data. We generally call it block cipher. Let me just write above here. We generally call it block cipher, right? So what is block cipher first thing? At the time block cipher, you need to know a few other things here. The first thing you need to know is what is symmetric cipher, then what is asymmetric cipher. So here we have two types of encryption. Let's just go with type of encryption first. So we have two types of encryption. The first one is the first one we have here is the symmetric key encryption. So if you are using symmetric key encryption, let me just show you the example for the better understanding. Go with this one. Let's go with like online AES encryption. All right. So I'm writing any message. You can write any message. Let's say I'm writing an email to Mike, and inside that email, I wrote a message. Let's go with hello Mike. It's Siddharth here, right? Let's say this is my simple message to Mike, right? What I will do when I click on the send button, my system will first encrypt that message. And for that encryption, you have to specify the key here. Let's say if I just convert 128 into let's say characters, then it will just you can just convert the 128 bit into keys into characters. Then I have to give it an input of 16 characters. Sorry for that. Yeah. So I have to enter the key, and the key length was 128 bits. So let's just enter the key 124, right? I have just entered 127, 1234567 and then back 87654321, right? And if I just click on this encrypt button, this will encrypt that message and then encode it into base 64 and then shows me the output. Again, you can't just read you can't just read that output, and you can't interpret that message that I have written hello Mike, it's Siddharth there. You can't relate these input and the output, right? So this one is just the output. And if you want to decode, if you want to decrypt that message back into the actual message, if you want the actual message from that output, what you have to do, just go with the reverse process for that encryption. So again, I'm just copying this output here and place it here just for the decryption part. And for decryption, I have to use the same secret key. For the decryption, I have to use the same secret key. If I just copy it and place it here, let me just show you the result for the different key first. I'm just replacing the last one by 0, right? And then if I try with the decryption, it will give me an error, right? But if I use the same key, and then go with the decryption. Again, it's a base 64 output, so I have to decode it. And after decoding, I can see my message like, hello Mike, it's Siddharth here, right? So this one is the symmetric key encryption, where you have to use the same key for both encryption and decryption, right? In symmetric key, your same key was used for both the things, for encryption as well as decryption. In symmetric encryption, we use same key for encryption and decryption, right? Other than the symmetric key, we have second type of encryption. We call it asymmetric key encryption. Yeah. So in case of asymmetric key encryption, you have to use different keys for both. You have to use a separate key for encryption. You have to use a separate key for decryption. You can't use the same key for both the things, for encryption and decryption. You have to use different string values. All right. So in case of asymmetric encryption, you have to use a different string values for encryption and a different string value for decryption. If I just show you the example, you can just go with this cipher here. Let's go with online RSA. RSA is just a cipher name that was named on three different scientists. First one is Rivers, second one is Samir, and the last one was Edelman. Right? This cipher was named on the name of three scientists here. And if we just go with online RSA encryption, let's go with the first link here. And here you can see for RSA, the key size can vary. For like you can start from 115 bit and it can goes up to 4096 bit. You can choose any key size here. But if I just go with the same message as I used here, if you just copy the message from here and place it here, right? So in case of RSA, not only for the case of RSA, for all the cases, for all the asymmetric key encryption, your system will automatically generate the key. You can't specify the key, right? Your system will generate the key all the time. So if I just go with this generation part and I click on this generate RSA key, right? Your system will give you two alphanumeric string values, which you can use for the both things, which you can use for encryption as well as decryption. But you can use one of them for encryption and you have to use the other for the decryption. So if I just performing encryption from this public key, then you can only decrypt from this private key. And if you are just performing encryption from this private key, then you can only decrypt with the public key again, right? So let me just go show you the encryption part first. So again, I'm just copying this public key here and let me just place it here in the place of the public key part. I'm placing the key here. After key, just write your message like, let's go with the message again. Like, hello Mike, it's Siddharth here. So I have the message and I have my key. If I just go with encryption, again, it's a base 64 encoded output. So I got my message here. I got the encryption. I got a ciphertext here. I got the output for the encryption. And if you just want to get the result, if you just want to decrypt that message and want to see the actual message, right? If you just want to decrypt that ciphertext and want to see the actual message, then just copy this ciphertext here, place it for the decryption part. And for decryption, if you use the same key, let me just copy the same key which I have used for the encryption. And if I place the same key inside this key part and then I try to decrypt, this will show me some error. If I just go with the key type and change it to public, as I have used here public key, again it will show me an error, right? So the main point was you can't use the same key for both the things, for encryption and decryption. You have to use the other key pair, right? So I have to use this key here. Let me just copy it. And if I place that key here and then I try to decrypt that message, I have to change the key type from public to private because again it's a private key. The label was for the private key, you can say, right? And then I go with the decryption. I can see the message, right? But the main point here was you have to use different keys for encryption as well as decryption. You can't use the same alphanumeric string values for both the key for encryption and decryption. You can't use the same, right? This kind of algorithm was known as asymmetric key encryption cipher, right? Again, so in asymmetric, we use different key for encryption and decryption, right? Other than this, after these types of encryption, right, we have type of ciphers as well. That was the type of encryption, and now we will discuss the type of ciphers, right? Again, we have two types of cipher here. So the first type of cipher was the block cipher, and the second type of cipher was stream cipher. In case of block cipher, your cipher or you can say your algorithm can only encrypt a fixed amount of data at a time, right? You can only encrypt a fixed amount of data. Like if I just go with the previous example for the AES, my AES can only encrypt 128 bit of data at a time, right? Let's say if I have a data like 10 MB, right? At that time, what my system will do? My system will create multiple blocks of this 128 bits. Out of that 10 MB data, my system will create multiple blocks, and the block size there was 128 bits, right? And then my system perform encryption on those blocks one by one. My system will first encrypt the block number one of around like 128 bit. Then after that, it will encrypt the second block, then encrypt the third block, fourth, and so on, right? So you can't encrypt the 10 MB data in a single go. You have to encrypt the data one by one, right? You have to encrypt the blocks one by one. So these type of ciphers can only encrypt a fixed amount of data. Like these ciphers can only encrypt fixed amount of data, right? That kind of ciphers were known as block cipher. Then after that, second type of cipher was the stream cipher, which can encrypt the data, but for a variable length. Let's say, let's go with the example. Suppose I want to convey some message to Mike again. I'm writing like message, hey Mike, right? If you just translate them into binary values, like the first one is 8 bits, again 8 bits, okay, 8, 16, 24, and you can just go and so on. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 characters. So for this message, the maximum size was 84 bits here. The message size was 120, not 124. The message size was 84 bits, right? But my AES can only encrypt 128 bit of data, right? At that time, we need to complete the block. We have to provide 128 bit of data as the input. You can't provide, you can't, let's say, you can't give it more than 128 and you can't give it less than 128. You have to provide the exact 128 bit of data for the encryption, right? You can't give it more, you can't give it less. At that time, if you have lesser number of bits, at that time, what your system will do, your system will append. You can say your system will add some kind of null bytes. You can say your system will add null bytes at the end of the data just to complete 128 bits, right? So at this time, for this example, let's say, like here we have to add 24 null zeros, not 24, 44, right? So your system will add, or you can say append 44 zeros at the end of this message. Hey Mike, then we have some zeros, right? Just to complete the 128 bit of data. But in case of stream cipher, your stream ciphers can encrypt data for a variable length. Let's say they can encrypt data for a minimum length of like 8 bits, not 9, it's 8 bits. Your ciphers can encrypt 8 bit of data, and they can also encrypt 128 bit of data. So it doesn't matter like you are providing 8 bits of data, you are providing 16 bit of data, it doesn't matter. It can encrypt between this range, right? So for the stream ciphers, we have a set of range. Like you can encrypt data between this range from 8 bits to 128 bit, or let's say 8 bit to 1024 bits, right? It depends on the cipher, which cipher you are using, but they can encrypt a variable amount of data. That was the main part of stream ciphers. So for the block cipher, you can take example of the AES and DES as well. Just remove this thing. Yeah. For the stream ciphers, or look at, let's say, for the block cipher, you can just go with some examples. Like the first one is AES, second one was DES. Again, DES was the deprecated version for the AES, or you can say AES was the advanced version for the DES, right? So DES again stands for Data Encryption Standard, and both the ciphers like AES and DES were standardized by the institution, by the organization. You can say both this AES and DES were standardized by the NIST itself. Again, I hope you know the organization name NIST here. So NIST was a American institution, not institution. It's an organization which gives you standards for different things, like for the encryption, for some set of rules. We have multiple things by the NIST. But again, AES and DES was standardized by this NIST, right? So let me just go with this. Yeah. So for the stream ciphers, you can just go with like these two, like Salsa 20 is one of the example for the stream ciphers, and Tata 20 is again one of the example for the stream cipher. But the point is, your NIST have never standardized any of the stream ciphers, right? Your NIST have never standardized any of the stream ciphers. Again, after these types of ciphers, let's just get back to the AES part. For the AES, for any kind of encryption, you can say here, the important part which you need to know was the type of data it can encrypt, not type of data, or you can say the size of data it can encrypt. So for the case of AES, your AES can encrypt 128 bit of data, and you can say the block size. We just go with block size. So block size for AES was 128 bit, right? Other than the block size, you need to know one more thing. That was the key size. And for the AES, you can use variable length for the keys, like you can use 128 bit keys, right? You can use like let's say 192 bit keys. Again, they were the key size was in bits here, and the third key size was which you can use for the AES was 256 bit. Right? You can use these three key sizes for the AES. Again, for the encryption part, your AES has a function which was performed on the data. Right? For the encryption part, we have a function which use the key to encrypt the data. Right? And in case of AES, we perform that same function multiple times. According to the key size, we perform that same function multiple times. Like if we are using 128 bit key, then we perform the same function, same encryption for functions 10 times on the data, right? So you can also call them rounds. We have 10 rounds for the same function. If you are using the 128 bit key, if you are using 192 bit key, then we perform the 12 number of rounds for the same function just to make the data more strongly encrypted, right? So for 192 bit key, you use 12 number of rounds, and for 256 bit of key, you use 14 rounds for the same encryption function, right? Again, other than this AES, so if in my notes part, we have some like a 10, we have some traditional ciphers as well, but they were not used nowadays. But if you want to read about these things, they were also listed in the notes. You can just go with these traditional ciphers as well, right? So other than this AES, or you can just also go with DES as well. Like some of the time, you can also see DES as well. So if you just go with DES again, that stands for Data Encryption Standard, and it's just a cipher name again. Right. For DES, the block size. You just go with the block size first. So for in case of DES, the block size was 64 bits. Or you can say you can only encrypt 8 characters at a time, right? In case of the, if I just talk about the key size, again, the key size for the DES was 64 bit. So you just have to specify like 8 characters in the key. The maximum key size was 8 characters, right? Or you can say 64 bit. Again, let me just write it here, 8 characters. After that, if I talk about the number of rounds, that number of rounds for the same function, which is performed by the in the case of DES, we always use 16 rounds for the same key, right? But we have a trick here for the case of DES. Being a being a developer or being a user, we have to specify 8 characters. So we have to specify key size as 64 bit, right? When you enter 64-bit key, what your system will do? Your system will just truncate. You can say your system will just let's say drop some bits, right? And only accept 56 bits out of them, right? Your system will only accept 56 bits. Again, it's a random process. It can go with random bits again, right? So your system will only accept 56 bits out of the 64. Then out of those 56, because we have 16 rounds in the DES, your system will generate 16 different keys. Your system will generate 16 different keys for each round. Like for the round one, we use the specific key. And for round two, we use the key two. For round three, we use the key three, key four, key five, and so on. Right? So for different rounds, we have different keys in case of DES. But in case of AES, we use the same key for different rounds. Right? But again, we have one more trick here. In the case of DES, the key size for that 16 different keys here is the 48 bit. You have to specify 64-bit key. You have to enter 64-bit key. Your system will only accept 56. So you can say your system will drop some bits from your input and just take 56 bit as the key here. And after accepting 56 bits, your system will generate 16 different keys of different key size as 48 bit. So because your system will generate 16 keys of 48-bit key size. So the actual encryption which was performed by the DES, right, and the key size for that encryption was 48-bit, right, or you can just also call it 56-bit key. You can also call it 64-bit key again. It depends. But actually, your system, if you're using the DES, your system will only use 48-bit key for the actual encryption, right? So, other than this simple encryption part, we have the hashing part, like why we use hashing and all different things. I'm just erasing these things. All the things were already available in the notes as well, so you can just go through the notes, right? So, other than this encryption, what we have is the hashing. So your encryption was only used for the confidentiality, right? Your encryption can only ensure the confidentiality. Let's say you're encrypting some messages, right? Let's say I write some message, not go with message, like just go with a simple letter. Let's say, okay, let me just go with the example. Let's say this is my user here, this is my post office here, and this is my receiver here, right? In normal example, what we generally do for the actual letters, we generally just send that letter to the post office first, right? And then the postmaster send that message, send that letter to the actual user, right? So first my letter will goes to the post office. Let me just name them. This is my user here who want to convey some message to that receiver, and here is my receiver, and here is my post office. So what a user will do, user will just send a message, send a, or you can user will write a letter, right? Write a letter to receiver, right? He will send that letter, or you can say he will drop that letter into post box, or you can say post office, and that your postman will just transmit that letter, or you can say your postman will forward that letter to the receiver. So that was the normal situation, right? But let's say your postman was an attacker this time. So what your postman can do, your postman can just read the letter and can modify the content as he wants, right? So how my receiver will verify that the letter, or you can say that the message was modified or not? Just to identify the data modification, right? Just to identify the data modification, we use the hashing, right? We always use hashing for data modification, but just to ensure the data was modified or not, just to prevent this kind of modification, we use the hashing. If I just clear these things and give you an example for the hashing part, if I just go with like online hashing, let's go with this first website, and I'm going to use multiple algorithms for the hashing again. SHA-256 is just one of them. Again, SHA stands for Secure Hashing Algorithm. You have multiple hashing algorithm which you can use for the different things. You can use TRC, you can use MD, you can use SHA. We have different algorithms. We have different versions for the SHA. You can use SHA-3, SHA. We have different output size for the SHA as well, right? So your 256 will show you the output of 256-bit characters, you can say, or different thing. Again, it depends on the versions. These were just different versions for the hashing algorithm, right? So let's go with simple hashes here. So if I just write a message, let's go with hey Mike, it's Siddharth here, right? Just keep that thing in mind. I have given a space after hey space Mike space, right? After that, I just press enter and write my second line. It's Siddharth here, right? Let me just add full stop as well, and let me add full stop here as well, right? So for that message, I got this hash value according to the SHA-256 hashing algorithm. So I'm just copying the hash value and let me just paste it here. Just go with the text value. My message was, hey Mike, space, full stop. And then it's like, it's Siddharth here, right? It was the message. And for that message, this is my hash value, right? And if the postman, or you can say if the post office or someone in post office, or you can say the postman itself, modify that message, or you can say if he just remove that space, right? Again, the hash value was changed, right? So while sending a message to receiver, what a user will do, user will just write that message, and for that message, he calculates the hash value according to this kind of algorithm like SHA-256. He will use this encryption, he will use that hashing algorithm and calculate a hash value for that message, right? So what he will do, he will just bind that hash value with that message and then encrypt it, right? He will just bind that hash value with that message and then perform the encryption, right? Then when the message was received on the, you can say receiver side, what your receiver will do, your receiver will again decrypt that message and again calculate the hash value according to the same hashing algorithm for that message, right? So if there was a bit change, if there was a change for a single bit, let's say if I just remove one space from here, or if I just change this capital M for the mic, or let's say if I just change this capital H, so if I just replace this small h for the it's Siddharth here, if I just replace this small h to capital H, even then my hash value will be completely changed, right? This kind of effect, when if you just change a single bit in the input, your output will be completely changed. This kind of effect was known as avalanche effect, right? So all the hashing algorithm like these one, they should show this kind of avalanche effect. Only then they can be standardized, right? If your hashing algorithm show this kind of avalanche effect, only then they will be standardized. We have one more thing here for the hashing algorithm. Let's say if you are able to generate the same hash value for two different messages, or you can say for two different outputs, it doesn't matter what you have used in that input here. But if you are able to generate the same hash, right, for different inputs, at that time we call it collision. When user was able to generate same hash value but for two different inputs, right, we call it collision. Your hashing algorithm should resist this kind of collision, right? Your hashing algorithm should resist this kind of collision, and they should show the avalanche effect. Only then they will be standardized by some kind of organization like NIST. Only then they will be used. Only then they can be used around the globe, right? They should show the avalanche effect, and they should resist the collision as well, right? So if I just replace, or if I just change, let me just go with the same message. And if I just change, so if I just remove this space after mic here, and then calculate the hash value and paste it here, you can see the hash value was completely changed, right? So what my receiver will do, when he receives a message, he again calculates the hash value and verifies it with the hash value transmitted by the user. That was the case here. Just by verifying these two hash value, if the values were exactly same, right, only then you can say like the message was not modified, not tampered while the transmission. But if the hash value was changed, then you can predict, then you can say like the message was modified while transmission, right? So just to identify the message was modified or not, just to ensure the integrity or just to verify the integrity for the data, you always use hashing here, right? So if you just talk about both the things, encryption and hashing at the same time, right? Let's just jump toward the digital certificate part. So in case of digital certificate, let's say I have a data, right? And let's say I wrote a book, right? And after writing a book, I want to sign it that I wrote this book. I'm the actual writer for that book, right? So what I will do, I'll just sign that book. I'll just sign the digital copy for that book. While I'm signing that data, my system will encrypt it, and when my system will encrypt that data, my system will create a hash value for that data and bind a timestamp as well. Like this data was encrypted with this private key, right? This data has a hash value like this one, and this kind of encryption, this kind of hashing was performed at this date at this time, right? So in case of digital certificate or digital signatures, you just create, or you can say you just encrypt your data, you just create a hash value, and for the proof that you are the actual owner, right, you use digital signatures. But in case of digital certificates were generally used to prove your identity. Like if I just go with simple example, let's say if I just go with Google here, I'm writing google.com, right? So what my browser will do, my browser will generate a request and send it to Google server, right? Then my Google server will reply back to the browser, and my browser will show me that page. Simple situation. But the point is how my browser will ensure that the website I am visiting here google.com, or the website I'm just showing to the user is the actual google.com. My browser will verify that actual, you can say, trust. My browser verify that trust with the help of digital certificates. So what my browser have? My browser have the public key, right? My browser has the public key for all the global level certificate authorities. Let's say, let me just draw a diagram here. Let's go with a simple example here, like this thing and this one more, and let's say here we have. Okay, so let's say this one is my user, right? So what my user has, let's say he has some data, right? Don't go with data, let's go with money this time. My user has some money, right? And he want to deposit in the near bank in his area. He just want to deposit that money in the nearest bank, right? And let's say he was new in the country and he don't know which bank was trustworthy, right? Was new in that country and he don't know which bank was trustworthy. At that time, what he can do? He can only trust the government. Like the government, if my government trusts on any bank, I can trust at that bank, right? If my government trusts on, you can say, if I'm talking about the Indian banks right now. If my government trusts on SBI bank, then I can trust on SBI as well, right? So my government is trustworthy. So let's say this is my government here, right? And for all the banks, we have a governing authority for all these banks. We call it RBI. So my government trust on this RBI authority here, which rules, which governs all the banks inside in India, you can say. And my RBI trust on this unique bank, let's say SBI. Again, I'm just writing here. Let's go with RBI. This is my RBI here. And this one is my SBI, right? So my user can verify this thing. My user trust on the government, right? And my government trust on this RBI, and RBI trust on this SBI. Through this trust chain, I can verify that SBI is a trusted party, right? I can trust on SBI because I trust on government, and my government trust on RBI, and RBI trust on SBI. So I can just trust on SBI as well. Like this is a trusted party, right? The same situation, or you can say the same scenario, you can say the same flow was there in the browser. So my browser has the certificate, or you can say my browser has the public key for all different kind of government, you can say. Or if I just scroll it here, or let's say government has its own certificate through which they prove their ownership, they prove their identity, right? Let's say like in India, we have the Aadhaar card just to prove our identity, right? The same thing was there, let's say, for the government, just to prove their government identity. They have some kind of certificates through which they can prove their identity that I am the government. You can say I am the government officer. They have some identity cards, right? For the browser case, we have this certificate just to prove the identity, right? And if you just go with the preferences or just go with the options here, and here you can search for certificates, and you can see a list of all the certificates which were available in the browser, right? So you can say my browser trust on this government level authority. My browser only has this government level certification, right? Or you can say your browser has the certificates only for this government level signing authorities, right? They can sign you their data, right? And for their public key, you can see your browser has the public key for the government just to prove that this is the actual government, right? Because if I just encrypt the data, right? I'm talking about the asymmetric key encryption here. If I just encrypt the data with the private key, right? The public key, or you can say only that public key can be used to decrypt that data, right? So for all those government level certificate authorities, my browser has the public key for them. If you just click on any certificate, and if you just go with the view options here, you can see here we have some public keys out there. You can just go with the pen and they will show you the public key here, right? But we have the government level trusting parties here. We have a list of all the parties around the, you can say all the parties around the globe which were trustworthy. Like if I trust on any party, let's say, if I just go with simple Google example, let's say I go with the certificate, just go with this secure connection option, just go with more options here, and let me just drag it here. Here you can see we have an option for viewing certificate. If I just go with view certificate, I can see that this google.com was, I just go with it. That's related to this example here at the bank part. Let's say just go with this one. Google.com is here at the SBI. I'm just writing it www.google.com here. Is at the SBI level, right? So for that Google.com, above that Google, here we have a trusting authority is as the GTS CA101. So I'm just writing here as GTS CA101, right? At the root level, we have the global sign, right? So being a browser, being a user, what my user will do, what my browser will do, my browser will verify the certificate, right? You can say a browser has the certificate for the global sign. Let me just show you. If I just scroll down, here we have for the global sign. Yeah, we have the certificate for the global sign, you can say, right? And through that certificate, I can verify that the person I'm interacting with, right? Or you can say this person is a trusted person. I can just give it, I can just give him my money and he will take care of that. Just because of that certificate, you can verify that this person is a trusted person, right? You can just show your trust. So in our browser, we have the certificate for all the root level CA. We call them root level CA, root level certifying authority. We call them for the CA. CA is just a short name, you can say, which we use for the certifying authorities, right? So these were the root level CA. Here we have the intermediate level CA. We call them intermediate CA, and that was the actual client, you can say, right? So your browser contains a list of all the root level CA which were present around the globe, right? And when you create a website, right, you need to sign it. You need to sign that website that I'm the actual owner for that website. And for signing, you need to prove some trust that okay, that like this person, or you can say like this GTS CA101, give me the authority to sign this website, or you can say your GTS CA101 sign your website google.com, right? And GTS CA101, right, was already signed by this global sign. So you can say a global sign will sign, sorry, this root level certifying authority will first sign a authority which we known as intermediate CA, which can again sign a lower level authority, which can assign like lower level clients as well. Just to prove this trust hierarchy. I I understand it's a complex thing to understand. So can I make it more complex? I don't know. But again, the flow was same. Your browser contains a list of all the root level certifying authorities through which it verifies that the website you are interacting with is the actual website or not, is a trustworthy website or not, right? If you don't have any kind of certificate, like when you just go with this kind of website, let's go with test PHP, right? It shows me connection not secure. If I just go with more information, we don't have any certificate through which we can verify that this website is secure, that this website is trustworthy or not, right? So with that certificate, we generally prove our our trustness, right? One more thing about the certificate was with all the certificates, right? We have some kind of connection encryption details as well. We call them cipher suit. We call them cipher suit, right? So cipher suit is nothing different. They just contain a list of encryption algorithms which your browser can use, or encryption algorithm which your server will use, right? So cipher suit contains like this value, like AES 128 will be used to perform the encryption, and for hashing we use the SHA 256. Again, it has the name for the encryption algorithm which we will be using for the encryption part, and it has a name for the hashing algorithm which we will be using for the integrity part. Again, the combination of the hashing algorithm, the combination of the encryption algorithm is known as the cipher suit. It was generally used in the browser, right? Other than this, the GCM name here, the GCM stands for Galvik counter mode. We have different modes of operation as well in the browsers. So you can throw the encryption part, which you can use to make the data more strongly encrypted or just to increase the effectiveness for that encryption algorithm. You can use this kind of modes of operation. Again, there is nothing different for the encryption part because only the flow will change according to the modes of operation. Let me just show you here. We just go with mode of operation. Mm, don't go with this. Don't go with Wikipedia. Yeah, here we have some images to which you can better relate to the modes of operation. Like if we just start with the ECB, ECB is the simplest mode of operation where you just give it some input as a plain text, right? You have to provide some keys for the encryption, and it will again use your key, use your plain text, perform some encryption, and gives you the output. This is the first block, right? Where you provide some input as your plain text and the key, then your system will perform some encryption part and gives you the output. This is just the ECB. We call it electronic code book. After ECB, we have one more which you can use. We call it cipher block chaining, or we also call it CBC. Right? In CBC, you have to provide three inputs. The first one is plain text. Second one is the key part, and one more input here with the name IV, which is generally called initialization vector. Again, it's a random value, like the right. So your the plain text will first XORed with the IV. This symbol plus inside this circle is used for the XOR operation. Your plain text will first XORed with the IV, then it will be encrypted with the key, just to make the data more strongly encrypted, right? Just to increase the effectiveness for that cipher, we use this kind of modes of operation. After that CBC, we have like different other as well, like PCBC, right? In which you use the same IV and you use a ciphertext. You use a ciphertext and then XOR them for the next block IV, right? Again, the flow was same here. You can just go with the pictures to better understand this kind of mode of operation. We have different other as well. Like you can use this one, full block CFP. Again, it's nothing different. You have to specify some plain text here, but in the case of this one, full block CFP, you are not performing encryption on the plain text. You are just performing encryption over the IV, right? And the output for that encryption will be XORed with the plain text. And after XOR, you go to your ciphertext, right? After that, we have the OFB, output feedback, in which again the same flow is there. You encrypt the IV with the key and you just XOR the same thing. The flow was same here, you can see, right? The flow was same here. It's nothing different. But the point is, here you can just go with the part before the encryption. Like let's say you have 50 blocks, right? So you can just perform like don't go with the perform part. Like let's say you can just process this data before the actual encryption. Don't encryption. Like this is more faster, you can say. OFB is faster. Yeah. Other than this OFB, we have the counter in which you have to specify three different other values as well. Like you have to specify plain text, you have to specify the key value. With that key value, your system will automatically generate the nonce value or you can say any random value. Again, according to the timestamp, according to the IP address, different values could be used to generate the nonce value. Again, it's a random value. Your system will generate a nonce value here, and your system will use a counter variable just to count the number of blocks. Right? So let's say this one is the first block. So for this block, the counter value would be 0. For the next block, your counter value would be 1, then the 2, then 3, 4, 5, and so on. Right? So your nonce value, or you can say your random number would be same there, but the counter value will keep on changing. Right? So you can just go with these things as well. We have multiple modes of operation which we can go through. Otherwise, it's not that much important for us. The main concept for the encryption and the hashing was to identify the encryption algorithm, to identify the key size, right? Again, the strength for the encryption depends on the key, right? All the strength for the encryption depends on the key. If you are using a lengthy key like 1024 bit, if you are using a lengthy key like 2048 bit, right? It's much difficult to break that key. Like if I just show you the brute force option, if I just go with brute force key, let's go with some images here, and you can see, right? If you are using a key for like 20 characters, it will take around like 5 years if you have only used numeric values inside that key, right? But if you have used uppercase or lowercase letters, it will take much longer to crack that encryption, right? So it again, the strength depends on the key size. Like you are using 16 characters key, you are using 24, you are using 32. Again, it depends, right? So you can use a lengthy key as well for the AES, for like RSA, DES. We have multiple encryption algorithms. It's not that much important to learn all the encryption algorithm name, but the important part was the key size. You should know the key size here.